How many people are JAMF customers now? Pretty popular, okay. Pittsburgh people. Okay, my home crowd, there we go. I'm hoping with this presentation, we all know there's wrong ways of doing things, but I don't think there's one right way of doing it. And hopefully either you see something you take back as something that's useful, or maybe I reinforce that what you're doing was the right way for you all along. Both are good things. The scripts I mentioned, I put them on a GitHub, little thing there. There's only like 4 or 5 of them, but they're out there. I will tell you I'm not a script master, but I know how to hack a little bit, and they do what they need to do. I also have this link at the end, so if you don't copy it down too quick, I'll be at the back. A little bit about me. I started out with Commodores when I was young. That's kind of my first intro to computer land. Pittsburgh Commodore Group, later on, very influential. This was all a hobby, of course. 99, I started working for Gateway. They came in, one temporary people. Long story short, they never asked me to leave. I never offered. It turned into what it is today. When I was hired, they asked me if I knew what Apple was, and I smiled, I nodded. I'd never touched one prior to walking in the door. I really underestimated how many Macs a school district would have. You know, on-the-job training. Worked out. A little bit about Gateway. We're in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. We're just outside of Pittsburgh. We are like one tunnel separated. We got about 3,200 students across multiple buildings, 330 teachers. Every one of them has a MacBook Pro in their hands. 30% of those are Windows people. Don't ask me why, but we give you choice. If you want to be on the dark side, whatever works for you. We also give our teachers iPad, 5th gens or better. That's pretty recent. We've only in the last 2 years started pulling the airs out, and there were iPad 2s and all that stuff. This is our department. I take care of all the Apple stuff, mainly by myself. I get a little of the tier 1 help from everybody, but for the most part, I'm Mac. There's 4 of us with our director. As you can see, we take titles very seriously. I change my title every 6 months, whatever floats the boat. Nobody cares. It's all good. We are looking for somebody as of November 2018. Hasn't worked out yet. We're looking. So, technology at a glance. This is what we have out there today. I'm going to show you how we got there. But mainly it boils down to a lot of shared iPads, K-4. Mosside Middle, which is 5.6, they are a 1-to-1. They've been that way for a couple years now. We have Gateway Middle, which is currently what I'd call ad hoc iPads. They were a 1-to-1, and it didn't work out. We're going to get into that a little bit. Gateway High School is basically Windows world. We've been a JAMF customer since 2012. We've been premium since October 2018. Here's a little bit about our iPad growth. 2011, I think we started out with 30 of these things. And then they're like mogwai. You get them wet. Well, not wet, but they multiply quickly. So our first 1-to-1 at Gateway Middle School. Summer 2014, we got 300 iPad 4s. The idea was for 8th grade, all of 8th grade to have one. Select 7th grade students, mainly the gifted AIM program people. We put orange gel covers on them because it was cheap and it seemed effective. And we also got a dedicated Mac Mini to just be the JAMF server for that building. Prior to this, we didn't have any 1-to-1 kids or any kids at all with iPads, and our existing MDM server was not set up for AD authentication. So instead of changing the world, we just built them a new one. The reasons behind this purchase, for what IT was told, is that there was a free algebra book that the AIU was offering, and we believed that it would offset the cost of purchasing other books. That didn't really pan out. Nonetheless, as far as deployment, we set up kids, they all authenticated to Wi-Fi and to MDM with their email address. Student AppleIDs came through deploy.apple.com, which was the initial offering of student AppleIDs. To get an iPad, you had to pass a Moodle course. You had to have your AppleID setup completed by a parent. You could opt in or out of the GSD Insurance Program. And you had to have physically printed paperwork turned into the secretary. One mistake we made that now I know was a mistake is we used email addresses to log into these things. We get to the end of this, I'll tell you why that became a problem. So the student Apple IDs, this was Apple's first foray into managed Apple IDs to an extent. You imported a spreadsheet to create the accounts. Parents got an email. Parents were supposed to follow the email, which kind of worked. Sorry for the quality on this. Unfortunately, this is like a screenshot of a PDF from 2014. But they got this email here on the left, and somewhere in there you see the blue links. They had to find the right blue link, and it would take them to a place where they filed even more stuff. I would tell you maybe half the parents got this on right off the bat. A lot of people would come in and basically say that we should help them or we should set it up for them, and we tried where we could. The iPad Moodle course really was just general care and feeding stuff. There was a quiz at the end of it. You had to have a 100% score to pass. When I was actually here at Mac Admins in 2014, Montclair Kimberly Academy had presented that year about their one-to-one. And they had what they called their driver's manual for iPad. And that really is what inspired this. The GSD Self-Insurance Program, it was $45 per iPad, not refundable. If you left in the middle of the year, we didn't give you your money back. Lost and stolen was not covered. Neither were accessories. We didn't put a limit on incidents. If a student didn't opt in and there was something wrong with the iPad that wasn't factory related, they got invoiced. At the time, all those repairs were handled by Mac Doctors of Pittsburgh. We held the money. We paid regular price for those repairs. So the actual deployment of the first year, the 14-15 year. We had a parents meeting. Prior to this, a little bit of Q&A. We opened the Moodle course immediately after that. First open house. For some reason, this made sense. So we take everybody in the auditorium. We have 4 lines by alphabet on open house night. And they just come in, they show us their paperwork, and we do what we do. Unfortunately, the person who took pictures of this event has long moved from Gateway, and we just realized we shredded their hard drive at Christmas. So words can't do justice to how insane this was. Like, just picture a room with, I said 70 people got done. So 70 kids with 70 guardians and possibly a friend of the guardian, and they don't want to be there. They want to get out. Admin wanted us to make sure that every kid logged into the iPad, that they got on Wi-Fi, that they got that free algebra book download through self-service. So every kid got a 5-minute deal. And to add to the craziness, sometimes DEP didn't always work. So the tech would go through and have to manually enroll them after the fact. Which not only added to the craziness, but it's not one of those things that down the road we paid for. So that first night was wild. Between the next night that we go to do this, the portal goes down. And it stays down until 11 p.m. the day before. You do what you do. You call your Apple engineer, and they call somebody, and we hope it works out. But that was very stressful. Again, handout again for the 14th, the 20th. That was a Saturday. We got 128 done. We added a help desk to kind of pull the people who were lost in the process out of the auditorium. Same deal the next time we handed out. Some common problems we faced year one. Again, I had mentioned about the kids who were not done through DEP. That allowed them to remove their MDM profiles. So we'd track them down on a regular basis. Students would roll back their date and time and install third-party profiles so they get cracked apps. vShare was a big one for us. Students would restore backups of non-managed devices from their personal iPads to make them unsupervised. And students also would exploit this little thing where JAMF self-service would allow you to download an app. The window for the App Store would open. And while that window was open, they'd go in and grab stuff they shouldn't have. A little explanation about that. They said they would open self-service, grab something big like Word. And while Word was reinstalling, the App Store is now available. And they'd go in and grab, I don't know, NBA 2K, Madden was a big one. For at least a few months, we were constantly tracking those kids down. And JAMF allowed us to make reports, and we knew who they were. But of course, trying to get somebody on the other end to go, hey, bring these kids down and discipline them or do what we have to do, is not really a conversation most people want to have. So the end of that year, we did a mass OTA wipe through JAMF. All at once. They all came down to the LGI, turned it in. Anybody who didn't turn in everything was invoiced. 41 iPads got broken that year. Most of the time, cracked glass. GMS year 2. We took all those iPads. We did a factory restore for 841. Self-insurance program still in play. We had talked about making changes, like having tiers for repair, but in the end, the school board would not sign off on that. They wanted to keep it the way it was. Still stick with the Moodle course and the AppleIDs. We did revamp the handout process. We swapped out all of our cases for STM, hoping that with the cover in the front that would protect the glass, we'd have less problems. And we also changed all our paperwork over to Skyward, which is our student information system. So parents would do everything that they had to do for us, at least online. Instead of being everybody in the auditorium, we changed this up so it's more of a stationed approach. That this way you could only even get into the building if you had your business right. You'd come down to the library, we'd go through your Apple ID, make sure you had it, it was active. Go get your iPad. In the LGI, we were doing like a mass encouragement process for kids on how to get through, to log in for the first time, get their apps and whatnot. Finally, they're going to get their case, they're going to get their power brick in another place, and they're out the door. We really thought we had something here that was effective. Most of the backwash happened in the library because the Apple ID process, again, finding the blue links, just really good stuff. We only did 2 handout days. We did this on a Saturday again, and then we did another one after school a couple days later. So this sounds all great, right? Like we made changes and it was faster. I didn't realize it, but the search for our MDM server expired that day. So we started the process, first like 20 kids, all good, and we're like happy, we changed everything, and we're flying, and it stopped. And the only thing you get, like when the iPad would go to talk to DP, you just get some weird error that you Google it, error means nothing. It was a very tense, like 2 hours of just anarchy, people waiting, people want through. But nonetheless, we did get 175 done, and DP worked flawlessly this time around. So again, with the common problems, DP fixed in iOS 8.4.1. We didn't have any iPads that would not do DP. We also, with 8.4.1, the restore bug got fixed. And later on in October, our last 2 biggest caveats got fixed when iOS 9 dropped. I mean, for IT, going into Christmas, I really thought we were square. We went and we got all the kids who had, Madden and stuff. And we took them in a room, and I forcefully wiped all their stuff, and we reamed them out for doing the wrong thing. It was a good time. So spring break, Gateway Middle School decides they don't want to be a one-to-one building anymore. So after IT got our stuff straight, everything's working, they don't want to do that anymore. The best answer I can come up with is that it came back to the student take-home and things that happen when the iPad's not on site was causing too much overhead for teachers and for the administrative staff. So at the end of that year, we took them in again, we wiped them, same deal, go to the LGI, bring everybody in, invoicing, 34 iPads got broke. So from 41 to 34. Summer 2016, we go ahead and we do the wipe again, going 935. We set up all these iPads in what we call an ad hoc mode. 20 to 30 per classroom, and they go into trip light enclosures. The ad hoc, basically, it's just a common Wi-Fi profile. The iPad's not associated to anybody. Luckily, with device assignable apps, we don't need AppleIDs. A funny fact, all these people, I was telling you about invoicing, like people who didn't return stuff got invoiced. A lot of people, when they were in 8th grade, figured, oh, it's $10, you're not going to remember. Those kids graduated this year, the first class, and they were really shocked when they couldn't have their diploma over a $10 charger that we didn't get back. I mean, it didn't add up to a lot of money, but it made us feel good. So this is where the iPads at Gateway Middle School resided today, or at least as of the end of this school year. Just 20, 30 in a classroom in a big block charger. They come out, they get used, they go back. Summer 2016, this seemed like a really great time to change the whole world for us. We had X servers about this time. They were running our MDM and a lot of other things. When sites came into JAMF, I really didn't understand them too well. And as time moved on, I really realized how badly I was using them. And the only way that I felt to get right was to wipe out everything. Scoping, the same thing. The way we handled profiles. When we first started out, when there was 30 iPads, it's like, okay, well, we got one profile for administrators. And everything about admin, one profile. Well, if I change one thing in that profile, everybody's email passwords disappear. That didn't go over too well. So we went back, we did layering. So we have a profile which is email, there's a profile which is for calendar, and they all stack together and they do what they're supposed to do. We had lots of apps in our tree that nobody was using anymore. And probably some of them weren't even available. So we also had 2 servers at this time for just iPads. We had our original implementation, which was still running elementary rooms, and then we had that Gateway Middle School only Mac Mini. All that got merged together. We virtualized these things. Pretty straightforward, Hyper-V running CentOS. I had 2 servers, one's dedicated for Mac, one's dedicated for iPad. And we were using MariaDB up until recently. So we go out, we do a full wipe of all the remaining iPads in the district too. We collect all the staff iPads at the end of the school year. Had to pry them out of some people's hands, but you know, IT does IT, right? A lot of reasons behind this, a lot of personal AppleIDs used. We'd have teachers who, they bought this app, another teacher thought the app was cool, so they would swap their AppleID around. Just like, if you can think of anarchy in app land, this is what it was. Again, I showed you we only had 4 people in our department, 1 being the director. So this is really how I get these things done. I have 2 kids, I bring them in. You know, they haven't realized this is work yet. They still think it's fun. You know, they work for pizza and singing Monster credits. So far, this is working in my favor. But that whole cart behind them, I mean, that's all iPad 2s. There's like 600 there. You know, they still think it's fun. So as long as they think this is fun, I'm going to keep using them. My wife knows better than to come to my office, by the way, because I put everybody to work. So some time passes and we go to try this again. Mosside Middle, this is year 1, 2017, we're talking about this in the summer. So we go out and get 650 of the 5th gen 128 gig iPads. At the time, we thought that we needed extra space. Everybody was talking a lot about multimedia product and what they wanted to create, what they wanted to do. So we went with bigger iPads at the time. We got Brent-heavy cases. They came through our AGI repair program. As far as deployment plans, there was no talk about books. And we knew that all the apps were device signable, so we didn't go with any AppleIDs. G Suite will be utilized. Relevant parent info was sent home, which we've been working with G Suite for a little while, so that wasn't really a new thing for them. We're trying to apply what we know about Gateway Middle School and not repeat. And as far as repair, we're going to go with AGI for their AGI Protect plan and cover all those new units. Changes to the formula. iPads don't go home in Mossad Middle. We're still using those AAA enclosures. They worked well at Gateway Middle School, so we're using them at Mossad Middle too. Students get them in the morning in homeroom. There's a little bit of time at the end of the day for them to go back to homeroom, put them back in. This also lets us do all of our updates and whatnot at the end. At the end of the day, when everybody's not home, well, when they are home, they're not with us. We push that stuff out. These things hold about 30. I think 32 is actually the right number. We don't use the Apple blocks for charging. We use Anchor chargers. They're like a 6-pack. Those have been working well for us. Every so often a plug will come out and we'll get a ticket, but overall it's well. So iPad handing out routines. In this case, we put all the iPads in the classroom. They're already pre-assigned through Skyward. The class would come to the lab with Mr. Yurlowitz, and he would walk them through the process, 30 at a time. At this point, we only put the base apps out there, stuff they absolutely had to have. As we got more of our class deployed, then we started pushing everything else everybody wanted to have. I would tell you probably 60% of the apps we put out are forced install, and the rest are just as you want through self-service. Another big change for us was Apple School Manager doing the student IDs. This replaced the old school style of AppleIDs for students. Data comes to ASM through Skyward, through our SIS, over FTP. And that's also what's feeding Apple Classroom, which, we sync based on user extension. The user extension holds your student ID number, and it also has your staff state ID number for making the teachers connect as well. End of the year, iPads are inventory, return to classes, OTA wipes again. We did it for we wiped everybody because we weren't sure what we were doing in the summer with these things. Lost iPad is the most ticketed thing we have. That year, 55 of them. 13 iPads got broke. Mostly cracked glass. Some of them had broke their headphones off. Year 2, that summer, we realized that we had to go out and swap out hardware for the elementaries. It kind of came down to, do we buy more big iPads for elementary, or do we buy smaller iPads from Mossad Middle and send these down to the elementary? Through JAMF reports, we had seen that the average iPad was not even half full. And if anybody was that far, it was probably with junk that they really didn't need to have. So we went with new iPads, 32 gig this time, for that building. And the rest of them got pushed down to elementary. In this case, it was such a last-minute decision that we actually talked to AGI, and they came in and did a white glove for us. They inventoried, tagged, all that happy stuff. We had talked to Apple about doing that for us. The price difference was there. And plus dealing with a local company, I mean, honestly, if something goes wrong, I know where to drive to and let somebody know. So improvements over the prior year. Every iPad has a label in the back that our secretary puts on. It's got a barcode, has a student's email address, as well as their student ID number. We use that for inventory purposes. And iPads, the labels, they're already assigned through Skyward. Handout routine. Again, we're still dealing with the same stuff. They go through the lab. and Troy takes them through. This year, we pushed all the apps at one time because they were already pre-scoped, they were already set up. We added an extra WAP to the lab just in case. This thing wants to get away from me. We find out this year that managed AppleIDs are needed. Even though we weren't doing books, they really wanted to use Clips. And Clips, of course, needs iCloud, and iCloud comes with the Apple ID. One nice thing is at this point, we were already doing shared iPads in the elementaries for a little while, so most of these kids already had Apple IDs set up. So that was a positive for us. Lost and misplaced iPads continue to trend this year. 55 last year, 76 this year. Again, not taking home, you wouldn't think that many people would lose their stuff, but it happens. So we went through the JAMF API, and tried to figure out if there's a way that we could put this into the secretary's hands. So we just have a short little bash script that goes out and takes the tag. It queries our inventory system to get a serial number, and then it goes back to JAMF with that serial number and issues a lost iPad command. It sets lost mode, and it does everything you would expect lost mode to do. And then they can go back in and unset lost mode when it's been found. And the great part about this is at no point do I get a ticket or I'm involved. I tell our secretaries, like, if they do this and it doesn't show up in an hour, put a ticket in and I will go through and do the locational stuff on my end and everything else we do. But this has worked out in most cases. So it's one of those things I'm really happy I put time into. Into this year, we did the whole inventory thing again. We only wiped 6th grade iPads because the 5th graders, we knew this hardware was going to stay. 17 iPads got broke this year. So, on the shared iPads in the elementary schools. Anybody doing shared iPads currently?
We're getting set for next year.
I will put it this way. I'm excited about it now that it works. So prior to looking into doing all this shared stuff, we had iPad 2s. Special Ed had gotten their group 220 years ago, and they were all over the place. The libraries had their iPad 2s. We also had shared carts in every building of iPad 2s. And all these units were deployed in that ad hoc mode that I was talking about with Gateway Middle School. So we started out small. The first year of this deployment went with just the libraries. We have 2 librarians. They handle 2 buildings each. They had previously had the 32 gig iPad 2s. They had all the apps. But for all the reasons I noted, they were at least interested in trying this out. Particularly like with Google, if you sign into one Google app, you've signed into them all, which in one-to-one land is a great thing. But in an iPad that you're going to hand back to a rack, it doesn't always work out well. It's also, we're creating individual experiences. We're kind of protecting the kid's work in an extent, because this way one kid's not just going to get in there and delete some other kid's stuff. Apple Classroom, too, is a big boon. When Gateway Middle School did their one-to-one, Apple Classroom wasn't even on the horizon. I mean, we did have JAMF Focus, Casper Focus. But there was a lot of just cliffs that nobody wanted to get over to make that a big thing. When we started showing Apple Classroom, it was something people really grasped onto with wanting to go with this shared mode. So MDM Setup, we do have the pictures on our accounts. They're referenced by their student ID number. We have static device groups for each building. Class is mainly set up for each library. So if you're in Ramsey, let's say, only the Ramsey homerooms show up. It's quite a list. Talk about the hardware. The iPad 2s came out. We put iPad 5s in. Configurator 2 to make sure that all those iPads had the latest OS. We use Configurator 2 to get it started, and MDM basically put them the way they needed to be with scoping and whatnot. Our librarians really took the torch here and starting out with the 4th grade, started helping them through the process of going through all the white screens and setting their initial passcodes. We went through 3rd and 2nd. They did do 1st graders, but not till like later in the year. And we never did do kindergarten, at least not yet. Initially I set up all those default passcodes, but by October, the librarians really got in there and started logging into the Apple School Manager website and setting up new kids and whatnot. So all this is great. It's working. And then it's not. So around April 2018, something changes in the Apple ecosystem, and random kids just can't log in anymore. They click their picture, they put their passcode in, and then it just sits there for eternity until either it crashes or you forcefully restart it. Eventually, this gets tracked down to data that somebody in Apple decided shouldn't be part of the shared system. And this does get fixed in 11.4.1, but only if you factory wipe the iPad. Oddly, I was at this conference last year when I learned that. So going back, I was like, okay, so now we're going to go back and wipe a ton of iPads. Year 2, just this past school year, we went out with shared iPads in all the K4 classrooms. Same idea, iPad 2s are coming out. Those iPads from Westside Middle I talked about, they're going in. We used Configurator, we wiped them, prepared them. Go to the classroom side, the librarians are still my go-to people. They're giving out the refreshers, and they're making sure the 1st grade now also from day 1 can do what they need to do. We deploy iPads 5 per classroom. Every teacher gets their own set. We group them at the MDM level by grade level, so that if there's 3 1st grades, there's 15 across that group. So you could say, talk to your cohorts and have a half class set for the day. There is also a cart in the building that you can use for a whole class experience. I have a little script I wrote because setting some of this up can be really tedious if you do it by the click. That's also in the GitHub. We use milk crates for our groupings. We looked at all the charging solutions available, and frankly, for the money, we just couldn't see it. In the past, we had bought docking stations that had nice locks and nice doors. And we found out in most cases that the locks disappear quickly, and the keys are missing. And we've seen some people, I won't name names, who've tried to force the locks because they got frustrated and wanted their stuff today. This just seemed like better the whole way around. I mean, as you can see, there's 200 or 600 iPads there, rather. Just a nice little stack of iPads. That's before we handed them out. The cost on that comes out to about $35. So, that's storage, that's charging, that's summer storage as well in a very nice compact package. $35. So, again, it's working great, right? New bugs. 11.4, which would be shortly after the school year started, it almost killed the whole thing. Like all these teachers who were used to ad hoc mode, they just turned on, they just went, are instantly like, why can't we go back? It worked when we were doing that. Well, it worked for you. It wasn't really the right way. So what we found is that if you set the max users, all those iPads were set for max of 5. So when the 6th person gets on, the iPad would hang. It would say getting ready, and then nothing else would happen. It would just sit there. If you restart the iPad and get the user to try again, that user gets in. I don't know what was forgotten or what got lost in the process, but they get in. Luckily, January, iOS 12.1.3 came out and addressed the problem. And from January, we've been good. There is no second slide that tells you, but wait, there's more. January 2019, we've been fine. So, Apple TV deployment strategies. When I initially signed up for this conference, I wrote in, I was like, yeah, we're going to talk about Apple TVs, we're going to talk about this. And then I started doing this presentation, I realized there's really nothing to say much about Apple TVs. They work. Our old ones, they're not MDM. They're hanging in there. We're slowly phasing them out with the new ones, and those are an MDM, and we're pushing some apps. One thing we do that probably a little outside that scope is we force all of our Apple TVs onto their dedicated VLANs that are separated from everybody. We do that because they're constantly chatting with each other. I don't know what it is about Apple TVs. I've never listened to them or asked anybody, but it just seems like they're constantly screaming at each other, like who's here. So we block multicast in that VLAN. We want them to be quiet. We want to force Bluetooth discovery because that's always been the best way, the fastest way for display. We do restart our newer Apple TVs every night. That kind of started with the third gens, and we tell people if it don't work, restart it. And it's just what we've continued to do, and we haven't had problems for doing it, and the API makes it really easy to do that. So we do it. That script's also in the GitHub. Our repair process. All along, I've talked about stuff that got broke, and this is kind of how we dealt with it. The years we've talked about, particularly Gateway Middle School 1-to-1, Moss Middle 1-to-1. Here's kind of what we had bought, what got broke, and if it was AppleCare covered or not. We don't buy AppleCare Extended. We do on our Macs, or at least we used to on our Macs. But as far as iPads, we've kind of always figured that it was under $1,000, so we didn't. Furthermore, when you start doing all the math to add up like what AppleCare will cost you, what that initial investment's going to be, from our point of view, it just didn't make sense for us. We also noticed that AppleCare didn't actually repair the iPads, or at least not repair them for us per se. So I was always getting another device that had a different serial number. Well, now my inventory is a mess, and DEP needs updated, and it was easier to look at other solutions. So life without AppleCare in 2014, going back to Gateway Middle School, we had contracted with a third-party guy, Mac Doctors out of Pittsburgh, to handle his warranty and our warranty and accident repairs. The average was about $150 for broken glass at that time. We had 41 units break. We put out about $6,200 for that. But that also came out of the student insurance program. So from Gateway's point of view, we weren't paying for it. Had we done AppleCare, we would have had to put out substantial money up front just for AppleCare. And that wouldn't be from the student money, that would be from district money. So that would have been budgeted for as well up front. Life without AppleCare in 2017. We work with AGI. We got AGI Protect on this. So each iPad's covered for 2 years for about $49 a piece. And that included a case that's worth almost $50. Average repair cost to us is $0. That's broken LCDs, headphones broken off in the port, which is becoming more common. That first year we had 13 break, and we paid $0. Same setup, it was AppleCare. Using 2017 prices, we would have put out about $30,000 up front just for the AppleCare. We would have paid about $637 in incident charges, and we would still have to get a case on top of all that. We all seen broken glass, but have you ever seen an iPad bent on all axes? The picture doesn't really do it justice, but this iPad, you could put it on a table the opposite way, and all four corners would touch the table. When we asked about it, we were told it was an accident. Not sure how that was an accident, but go with narrative, right? After I sent this out to AGI, this is how it came back. It was flat. It was right. Still works great. And we didn't pay for that. Of course, there are some iPads that can't be fixed. Deep logic board failures. structural damage to the case. This is one that just came in here in June. You can see like it's severely dysmorphed. This iPad couldn't be fixed because right there, there's a tear in the case. And when you have that kind of structural damage, it's not worth getting into. So on that one, we take the hit. It goes in the recycling bin. Am I worried about dealing with a third-party repair depot? No. There's been repairs that can't be done because, again, deep logic board issues or really hardcore damage. But it's pretty rare that something can't be fixed. We've been sending iPads, MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros since about the summer of 2016. I originally found them because I was buying parts for after-hours repairs, and it just kept evolving into a bigger relationship for us. So, just when you think everything's square, everything's working, right? It's not. We're always evolving to support new things and deal with problems we didn't know we had. So you remember I said I had 2 MDM servers currently? You know, Macs, iPads. So when Apple Classroom drops for Mac, we find out that the only way a Mac can get those classes and control those iPads, they have to be on the same server as the iPads. So now we can start migrating everything to a central server. Everybody, one world. Our ASM sync to JAMF has been hinky all year. We probably, I would tell you 3-4 times have had to completely gut it and set it up over again. Gut it, set it up again, it works fine, and then it doesn't. So just in May 2019, these are all things we changed in the last 2 months. Our JAMF usernames, we were using that email address. To get the Macs, to get Apple Classroom, your local username, which is your MDM username, has to match your JAMF username. So it was either we go through the database and remove all that business, or I start wiping computers and changing local usernames to @. And I did do @, by the way. It kind of works. There's some caveats. When I talked to Apple, they told me mileage may vary and it's not a recommended practice. I did get lucky here. JAMF did give me a script that we went through our SQL and removed all the @s, and I cleaned it up real quick. I have about 30 people who I started doing the @ on just as a proof of concept, and I will have to go back to them when they come back to school and fix that. But that cleanup script really did help. That's just one of those things we did. 2014 is when I set that up. And 5 years later, we're paying for it. But at the time, it made sense. The thing with the ASM sync, like I said, we were using a custom field for student ID number and staff state ID number. In the end, that was really the root of a lot of our sync problems. Working with our support contract, sending all the debugs and whatnot, there was a lot of errors happening with the sync related to extended fields. When we dropped that, we just strictly went with email address for the syncing, the email address field on both sides. It worked immediately. The last time we had to rebuild, I didn't wipe everything. We just went in and removed that field. I changed the ASM sync to use email. It just worked. It worked fast. It worked now. So we have good feelings about that. We got rid of the extended user field altogether, just so that there wouldn't be any more of that in there. Now, I do have to tell you that in the JAMF Administrator Guide, at least the way I read this, they're encouraging you to use the user extension field. All I can tell you is that from our experience, this was really a bad idea. It made sense at first, but as the year went on, and we kept having these problems, dropping this and changing the way we sync seemed to be the only way to make our problems go away. And I was told that there is an incident, a bug request that says that this is a bad idea. But if they're telling you here's a bug request is a bad idea, why does the guide still tell you it's okay? I checked this last night. I've been checking every week because I did talk to our support and go, hey, just so you know, I'm going to bring this up. Maybe put a big asterisk and say we're kidding or something. I don't know. It's still there. So as more Macs move to the MDM iPad server or singular server, we're starting to see performance issues. There's still about 750 computers that have to move. We ditched MariaDB, and we've now moved to a standalone server which is just running MySQL for us. And we saw a major performance bump that way. We're also talking about clustering Tomcat at some point, but we're not there yet. So how about 2019, 2020, this coming school year? We're working on migrating all the shared cart iPads to the singular MDM server. We're continuing to migrate staff not only from the other MDM server, but also to 1014. We're federating student-managed AppleIDs. I did that on vacation about 2 weeks ago. Honestly, the way I choose to have fun on vacation mystifies even me. But that seems to be working. For shared iPads, even though we're federated, they still need a passcode. I was a little surprised about that. I get the logic, still a little surprised. Teachers recently have started getting Apple Educational Service training. And through that educational service training, they're telling me now they'd like the student iPads to be renamed in a way that reflects the student. Today, the iPads are like GSD iPad, a tag number, or maybe a serial. They want to be able to see them and identify them by the kid and the name. Staff also wants to be able to change the name of their machines so they can airdrop each other. I'm probably going to do that. Like the iPads, they're currently named something crazy too. I don't know. We'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. We're bringing shared iPads to Gateway High School this year. We have 2 groups in Family Consumer Science of iPad 4s. We're going to be taking them out and putting 6s in there. These will be running Moodle Manager. I'm curious with the cost changes of JAMF, what other things are on the market. And honestly, vendors who want to get in will tell you about anything you want to hear. I want to see real world. Like, I know what JAMF does for me and what they'll keep doing for me. I want to see what Moodle really does when we paid them to be there. They're on these iPads and things go wrong or don't go wrong. And that's about it for me. And that's probably a lot to take in, particularly the last day of the conference. I don't know if anybody was out last night. But, any questions?
I just wanted to ask if you could put your presentation on the GitHub.
Yeah, I plan to.
Okay, that's it.
This is my first time presenting, so after I take the nervous victory walk, that'll be the next thing I do.
So my question is, who's deciding in your school district why one school has one-to-one versus another school has shared iPads?
I think it's just natural progression. Let's see, Mosside Middle has been really good with the one-to-one. There's still some question about what grade level is it appropriate. When I started work for Gateway in 99, we used to have the computers were ad hoc. You didn't log in, you didn't do anything. And we came through and we said, okay, well, we're going to put buttons on there, K1, 2, 3, 4. And teachers go, oh, you can't do that. They can't do that. We did it, it worked. And then one year we go, okay, well, second, third, fourth, you guys are going to log into AD now. You can't do that. Kids can't do that. But they do. Like, we just keep turning the screw a little further every year to see how far we can push people before they either retire or they come get me in a parking lot. But I think I could see third, fourth grade being a one-to-one. K to 2, probably not. But shared iPad has been working well, at least as of January. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Thanks for the talk. Thanks for sharing. The SIS that you're using, Skyward, is that correct? Or
Yes.
Does that offer direct integration with ASM, or did you have to go through the SFTP options, syncing back and forth?
Yeah,
between
we're
that?
SFTP. Skyward offers a default template for this, which helps a little bit, though we end up modifying it heavily. But yeah, unfortunately, it is SFTP. It's working though; it's reliable.
And with the new federated AppleIDs, I don't believe, is that step still necessary?
To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. I think it would be, because classes, like, how else will you get classes? Our AD server or Azure doesn't know about classes. So I think that's still going to be a thing. We want to test that more. I really think that federated will come in heavily for one-to-one. Shared iPad being the passcode thing, you still have to set a passcode. It's not really going to be an impact player yet. Anybody else? This is good. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for sitting through my first presentation. I walked around the halls twice here before we got started just to make sure I was in the right place. And enjoy what's left of the day.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Guys.